Well, I mean, on the one hand, it shows us how complicated things are. What the Americans would like actually to have is just tying up the loose ends. There is no kind of no whatsoever intention to get back to the 2015 deal. I think that what the Americans would like to have here is sort of understanding, not a deal, or sort of an interim accord. Even if the Americans deny that, I think that this is the best under the circumstances the American can get in order to make sure that in Biden's shift, Iran is not actually coming up with kind of a breakthrough. In return to that, Iran is going actually to get the money, which has been freezed in Iraq, South Korea, etc. Saudi Arabia, which is definitely kind of a case to the point here, is being approached by the Americans with kind of an intention of sort of an incremental normalization where the Saudis are going to get stuff from, where the Saudis are going to get stuff from Israel rather than the Americans, because the Biden administration cannot allow itself actually have something which does need the approval of the Congress. This is a very, very complicated system. But what counts is the Americans' will not to get into kind of a mess up in the Middle East in the forthcoming elections or the forthcoming year. And I do think that even if the Americans deny that, I do suspect that there is kind of an intention to concoct kind of a deal by which, as I said before, tying up the loose ends and compensate partially both Israel and Saudi Arabia for the time being.
Look, the Ayatollah himself, spoke about, sure, being in favor of an agreement on various issues, but he was clear to add that the existing infrastructure, their nuclear industry, can't be touched. It feels like that may already be some kind of a non-starter. Isn't that existing infrastructure the problem in this equation? Does it speak to the fact that we're likely to see nuclear proliferation actually across the Middle East now instead of rolling it back?
Definitely, but this is actually what the precondition of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. What he says that if actually things are going to be stay put, so, I mean, the Americans are not going to harm or damage any item of the Iranian nuclear industry, this is acceptable. And as he said before, agreement is something that they could consider. Once again, the Iranians have their own calculus. They are going actually to be benefited twice. On the one hand, they're going to get all these economic, let's say, benefits that they're going to get actually if there is even an interim agreement. Second, they are still at the same point where they actually are with regard to the nuclear industry. It could basically prevent Israel from attacking Iran if there is sort of an interim agreement. And at the same time, the Saudis are a bit less anxious. But once again, Iran is feeling as if actually she or it could play the cards better than ever before, and the Americans are at the bay. And this is why we do hear actually denial of those indirect talks on the one hand, but on the other hand, the Americans are coming up with a warning sign by which to say that if the Iranians are not willing to get sort of an agreement or an understanding, I would say all options are on the table, which differently put is a military strike.
Yes. Look, from Israel's side,
I mean, we are in a very, very, very delicate junction.
Just that, the Israeli officials have wall-to-wall sort of warned that these kind of talks just another way to allow Tehran to continue enriching uranium. Look, from the Israeli perspective there, any kind of deal is decidedly bad. What appears to be Israel's desired course of action on Iran?
Well, Israel is afraid of any deal that would prevent Israel by nature from attacking Iran.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that we won't be bound. Israel wouldn't be bound by any kind of agreement with the U.S., maybe already alluding to the fact that, the jet's just going to be fired up.
I agree with you, but, everybody knows that it is much better for Israel to have kind of an approval or have sort of a co-production with the Americans if and when actually a deal is being carried out. It would be kind of a very, very bad course to take if Israel is going to be isolated. And even if Israel is going to do the attack or to come up with attacking Iran, this would be against the stream. Israel, and I do accept that, is doing whatever it can in order to diplomatically convince the Americans and the Europeans that if worse comes to worse, Israel would attack. But if you have a diplomatic international backup, it is much better. Anyway, Israel also is experiencing kind of a narrowing down of the window of opportunities. This is something that we had said before. Now we are getting closer. And I think that the coming year, or a little bit more than that, would be kind of a time span in which Israel should do something. I mean, the question is when and what would be the scope or the volume. But basically, we are getting there one way or the other.
Perhaps by the day.
What the Americans are trying to do is just actually, as I said before, tie up the loose ends in order to better
a different issue here in Israel, for sure. Professor Rabi, thanks for being with us as always. We have our eye on the issue, and I know, as you mentioned, Israel at large does as well.